In this next section, we're going to talk about how the cells in your body grow and divide and reproduce, and how your body controls this cell division because it has to be very controlled, and what happens when the cells start dividing out of control because of a mutation, which is basically cancer. So before we dive into the process of cell division, we have to first talk about how to create new life. So to create new life, we need two types of cells. These types of cells are called gametes. Gametes is a big fancy word for sex cells. There's two types of gametes. There's egg and sperm. A single egg cell has 23 chromosomes in it, while a single sperm has 23. When the egg and the sperm come together, they produce the first cell to make life. So basically, a zygote is the first cell. Hey, at one point in your life, you were a zygote. That's weird, huh? Now, zygotes, because they have 23 chromosomes from the egg and 23 from the sperm, these guys are going to have 46 chromosomes total. From there, this zygote is going to divide several times all over the place, right? Tons of division. And now we have what's called an embryo. Embryonic cells are going to divide consistently until they form specialized cell types. So some of these cells are going to form skin cells. Some of these cells are going to form red blood cells. Some are going to be white blood cells. Some of these cells are going to form bone. Some of them are going to turn into neurons and nerve tissue. Some of them are going to become muscle. So you get the picture. All these cells are eventually going to become specialized cells. These cells in the body that are just, these specialized tissue cells, these are called somatic cells. So somatic cells are anything that are not egg or sperm, basically all the other cells. Now, all of these other somatic cells, they're also going to have 46 chromosomes in them. So what we say is, because gametes have half as many chromosomes, 23, they're what we call haploid. Haploid, they have half the number of chromosomes. Somatic cells, which have the full number, these are diploid. So once again, diploid has the full number of chromosomes. In the case of humans, it's 46. Haploid has half. In the case of humans, 23. Now that we have this embryo, guess what it's going to turn into? That's right. That's how to make a baby, everybody. Now, an embryo is an unborn fetus. It's still in development. So these cells in the embryo are going to divide and replicate very quickly. As you know, it only takes 9 months before this is going to be a living child. So embryonic cells must replicate very fast. Some other cells in your body also need to replicate fast. As you know, skin cells must reproduce very quickly because you're constantly shedding your skin. And also, if you have an injury or a cut or anything like that, your skin has to repair. Same thing with your red blood cells. They must replicate very fast because your body needs to replenish red blood cells, keep them fresh. Other cells in your body, as you know, will never reproduce. One thing that's very important, though, is remember that these cells are all diploid. They have a lot of DNA. They have 23 chromosomes from the egg and 23 from the sperm. As you know, DNA is made up of this really long chain of A, T, C, G. It goes on for a very long time. And if you were to have this DNA unwound, in one human, the DNA would be like 7 feet long. So somehow your body has to have a way to package and smush this DNA up so that it will fit in your cell because your cell's so tiny. So we gotta smush this DNA together and get it to fit. The way that your body smushes this DNA is it makes what's called a chromosome. Here's what a chromosome is. First, you have this really long piece of DNA. Now, first thing that's going to happen is this DNA is going to wrap around these proteins. Kind of like a yo-yo. Did you ever have a yo-yo when you were a kid? I don't know if they still make them anymore, but you kind of wrap the string around this device, right? This is the same kind of concept. These proteins are called histones, these little purple proteins. And what happens is the DNA will wrap around them many times. When the DNA wraps around the histone, it forms what's called a nucleosome. So a nucleosome is the DNA plus the histone. Next, these nucleosomes are going to zigzag really tight, like pictured here. They form these nice, beautiful, tight zigzags. And then eventually these zigzags will all bunch up and they'll form the chromosomes. And as I told you, most human cells have 46 of these. So every single cell in your body that has a nucleus, and here's something to remember, all cells in your body have a nucleus except for red blood cells. So almost every cell in your body that has a nucleus, so almost every cell in your body is going to have this exact copy of all 46 chromosomes. There's 23 sets of chromosomes. Set 1 through 22, all right, 1 through 22 are what we call autosomes. These are the DNA that's going to give you your general characteristics. It gives you both your general and your mental, your physical characteristics. Like it makes you who you are, right? Then the 23rd set is your sex chromosomes. And you're going to see a lot of these kind of maps that will show all 46 chromosomes lined up like this. So remember, you have, for example, set 1 here. One of this pair came from the egg that you inherited, and the other one came from the sperm. And that's how it works for all 23 of these. So when you see these maps like this, these maps are called karyotypes. And this is a way we can visualize the chromosomes in a person. So every single cell in your body, every nucleated cell, has this exact set of chromosomes, this exact karyotype. No matter whether we're looking at a skin cell, a white blood cell, a nerve cell, you name it, all the cells that have a nucleus are going to have this exact karyotype. So in your cells, in your body, there's 2 different types of reproduction that can occur. The first is asexual reproduction, meaning we don't need an egg or a sperm for this. So for example, if we had a skin cell, and it needs to divide into 2 new cells, this would be asexual reproduction. During asexual reproduction, the original skin cell, this would be called the parent cell, and the 2 new cells that came from the parent cell, we call these the daughter cells. That is the name. They do not have a gender, but it's just what we call them. They're the daughter cells. During asexual reproduction, all the daughter cells, these 2 new cells, are identical to the parent. So there's no variation at all. All cells are clones of one another, meaning they're identical. On the other hand, in sexual reproduction, like I showed you in the first slide, in this case, we need the egg and the sperm cell. Those 2 are going to come together and they're going to form a new cell. In this case, during sexual reproduction, there is variation. The new cell, the new daughter cell, is not going to be identical to either the egg or the sperm. It's going to be genetically very different. And don't forget, in sexual reproduction, these 2 parent cells are haploid, while the daughter cell is diploid. Whereas in asexual reproduction, all of these cells were diploid. This one was diploid, and the 2 new ones are also diploid. And no matter what, we must remember the cell theory. All new cells must come from a pre-existing cell. Cells cannot spontaneously appear out of thin air. Now, we have very fancy names for asexual and sexual reproduction in biology. In biology, asexual reproduction is known as mitosis. And for sexual reproduction, which requires sperm and egg, if we need to make sperm and egg cells, to make these is a special kind of cell division called meiosis.